was a downer, huh?
Yeah.
Before we get into that, I want to tell you a story. It's a rabbinic story. This is from the Talmud, and it's kind of cool. That's my lead-in. It's kind of cool. So back in the day, the rabbis were sitting in the study hall, and they were arguing over a stove. They were trying to decide whether it was pure or impure, and there was a disagreement, which is the way we start all Jewish stories. There was a disagreement. So Rabbi Eliezer said that it was pure, and Rabbi Yehoshua said it was impure. It doesn't really matter what the argument is about, Cheryl, so it's okay. It's okay. I know, it's like, what does it mean that an oven is pure or impure? It's not relevant. Okay, so they're arguing about the fine points of law, okay? And Rabbi Eliezer, very respected, probably the most highly respected Talmud scholar of his day, says, I will bring you all this proof, and I will show you the legal, logical argument about why this oven is pure. And so he does that. And Rabbi Yehoshua and the other side say it's impure. So Rabbi Eliezer was really expecting logic to win, and when it didn't, he got upset. So he sort of loses his temper, and he said, if the halacha, if the Jewish law is in my opinion, then that carob tree over there will fly 100 meters away. And it does. And Rabbi Yehoshua says, what does a carob tree have anything to do with our legal halachic discussion? Unpredictable answer, but that's what he says. And, Rabbi Eliezer doesn't want to take this lying down, so he gets even more upset. And he says, all right, well, if the halacha is my way, if the Jewish law is read my way, then the aqueduct, the river, will start flowing in the opposite direction. And it does. And Rabbi Yehoshua says, this has no bearing on our halachic tale. This has no bearing on our conversation. What does water and flowing in whatever direction have anything to do with this halachic discourse? So Eliezer says, if I am correct, the walls of this very study hall will bend. And they do. And they go down, they go down, they go down. This is sort of alarming. And Rabbi Yehoshua jumps up and he says, hey, you! And he's talking to the walls, and he says, hey, you walls! He says, what right do you think you have to comment on the legal conversation that we're having in the study hall? So, in honor of Rabbi Yehoshua, they pause right where they are. And in honor of Rabbi Ezekiel, they don't go back up. And the Talmud teaches us that the walls remain that way still. This is not the end of the story. He gets even more upset, Rabbi Eliezer, and he says, he stamps his foot and he says, look, if the halacha goes with me, then a divine voice will issue forth from the heavens and say that I'm right. And a divine voice issues forth from the heavens and says, why are you giving Rabbi Eliezer such a hard time? He's always right in matters of legal precedent. And you think that that would be the end of the story, but it's not. Rabbi Yehoshua jumps up to his feet this very last time and says, who are you to make a ruling on this legal precedent? You gave us the right to have these legal discussions amongst ourselves when you gave us the Torah at Mount Sinai and said that it is to be made by majority of the rabbis. So you might wonder who won. The law went with Rabbi Yehoshua. So it was impure, the oven was impure, and even though the carob tree and the water and the walls and the heavenly voice said that Rabbi Eliezer was correct, the ruling went with the majority because Torah is not in heaven. It is here amongst us, in our hearts and in our minds. There's a coda to this story. Many years later, Rabbi Natan, third rabbi in the story, encounters Elijah the prophet. And what he wants to know most from Elijah the prophet, who has the ear of God, what God was thinking during that whole conversation. Like, so how did God feel about that whole thing between Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Yehoshua? And the prophet Elijah said that God smiled and said, "My children have triumphed over me. My children have triumphed over me." So the teaching being that Torah is not in heaven, Torah is with us. So what does that mean? And what does it have to do with two boys sacrificing alien fire and getting smote by the Lord? So does anyone remember the context of Nadav and Abihu? Like what's going on here?
Well, the children of Aaron, who he's bringing in to be priests.
Right, oh wait, I have to give you a mic.
Here.
I've been scolded.
They are children of Aaron.
No, they won't hear you on Zoom, and they will be very left out.
We hear you, Adam.
Okay, so go ahead.
They are the children of Aaron, the high priest,
Right.
and he wants to make them priests along with him.
Okay, so we've just spent all this time leading up to,
You're going this one?
we've spent all this time leading up to what's going on with the Mishkan, right? So we've been preparing the Mishkan, we've been hearing about what we're going to donate to the Mishkan, we finally made the tabernacle, and we just concluded the major sacrificial rite, and everything went according to plan. Except Nadav and Abihu enter at the very end with this alien fire that God didn't order, didn't command, and gets evaporated. Fire consumed them. So it seems, at a very facile reading of this parsha, that really all we're being taught is follow the rules. God has rules, we have to follow them, and if we don't, there will be repercussions, major repercussions. This does not speak very loudly to me as religiously inspiring. So I wanted to juxtapose it with this rabbinic text, the story that I just told you, about how Torah does not reside in heaven, it resides among us. And I want us to just hold that ambivalence, that juxtaposition, just hold those two things. There is a right way of doing things. Judaism teaches us that there's a right way of doing things. And Judaism also teaches us that we are the deciders, or we are the deciders of Jewish law. And in Reform Judaism, we each get to make that decision for ourselves each day. We come into this service and we decide if we're going to come to Shabbat. We decide if we are going to say a blessing. We decide if we are going to say Kaddish. And in that way, we as Reformed Jews are trying to find a balance between the tradition and the needs and the spirituality that we find in everyday life today. So, in making our decisions moving forward, I hope that we will not have to uproot trees or switch the direction of water or make anything cave in, but that we are able to really listen to each other and come to mutual consensus. Like during the bylaws that we're gonna vote on after services. So this will be how we bring the Torah from the heaven into our congregation, and it is all of our responsibilities to ratify the new bylaws and bring them into effect so we can have a more effective synagogue, and everything will be happy and glorious in the world. Amen.
Amen.